All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, I'm super excited to roll into this next hour. We got Nikki Faye calling from Kenya. We were just chatting offline behind the scenes, getting to know each other, and I know she's going to drop some beautiful knowledge for everyone today. So before we roll into today's presentation, you all are going to see that the hour is going to fly by super quickly. So I just want to go over some housekeeping rules to make sure everyone's feeling confident and comfortable, and you can really maximize this next hour. I'll start off by saying, I know that we're going through a lot of crazy things in the world as we are a global community calling in. Now I'll shout you all out. If you're just joining, drop in the chat box, let us know where you're calling from. And with that said, I really appreciate you all taking the hour out of your day to join this conversation because you could be doing anything else, but you decide to be with us. And I really honor that and respect that, as I know Nikki Faye, our guest speaker, does as well. With that said, turn your cameras on whenever you feel confident and comfortable enough to do so. We believe in visibility. We want to see your beautiful faces. I've muted everyone upon entrance just to avoid background noise, but I can't stress enough, would love to hear from you throughout this next hour. And in fact, I'm going to sound like a broken record to remind you all that we'd love for you to come off of mute and to write in the chat box to share your reflections, share your dreams last night, share your tips and tricks as well, so we can really make this a roundtable discussion. If you want to be kept anonymous, if you have any sensitive information, feel free to find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie, and you can write to me anonymously, and I'll flag that to our guest speaker, keep you anonymous. The last thing I'll say is that this is being recorded, so if you do hop off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording that you can rewatch on Power to Fly. With that said, I know that we live in a time where everyone is multitasking all the time. I invite you to be present with us, and then you can rewatch this video later and you can multitask then, and you can write notes vigorously at your leisure. And we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. I see folks representing where they're calling from, so I'm going to give you all a shout out in just a few moments. But first, I want to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Nikki Faye. Nikki Faye, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today?
Well, first of all, I am coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. I moved abroad probably about 5 years ago, and I was working a regular corporate job, one of the largest entertainment company in the world. And I love to travel. First of all, love to travel, still do. And so I would always like schedule myself to travel. All the holidays, no one really took off and worked Christmas. So, after traveling so much, it's just like, I kind of, at a certain point, like I hated coming home. I'm just like, I really want to keep experiencing and learning and experiencing the cultures and meeting new people. And so, but I would still come home because I have a job, I have to work, right? So finally, I went through a personal tragedy. My mom passed away, and she had said that she wanted to travel once she retired, and she passed away at the age of 57. And so at that point, my mindset went to, you know what, you can't continue to wait. If you want to do something, you have to do it now. So I just packed up. Like I had made a decision while I took a small sabbatical after she passed away. When I was on the plane headed back home, I had made a decision right then. I'm moving in 6 months. So when I went home, I was like, let me try to go into strategy mode to figure out how I want to make this happen. So planned, like did all kinds of hustles, including my, normal 9 to 5, all these things to save money so I could be ready to make that move. And so in 6 months, sure enough, I was gone. I moved to Colombia. And so I stayed there for a year, and then I figured out, hey, travel is really what I want to do. So I started traveling all around the world. But meanwhile, I had started building my businesses and building my brand. So when I first left, being honest, I had no idea what I would do. But once I got there, I was staying in Airbnb because I didn't want to commit long term. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I just started looking for Airbnbs. Now, we all know when we're looking for those Airbnbs, we want those Instagram worthy Airbnbs. We want to do the video, going through your apartment, look where I'm staying, this is so great. And so what I found was that all of those places were booked solid all the time. At a certain point, I started doing the math, like, hold on, if they're booked every day, how much are they really making, right? So once I calculated this, I was like, okay, this is the business for me, right? So immediately I secured like 3 properties and started Airbnb. which was great, but it kind of hindered my travel just a bit because you don't always have to kind of be there to cater to guests. People are always, having issues. And so I found myself like feeling like I had to be around. But at the same time, what I noticed was the trend among my guests was that they all wanted to go to these tourist destinations. They wanted cars, they wanted massages, they wanted doctor's appointments, and all these things. And so as I was giving them access to the things they needed, the light went off again, like, hey, this is a business and it's one I can do while I travel. So same way I moved from my 9 to 5, I packed it all up and I started a travel business. So because we do so much more than travel, it's a travel concierge business. So I started to cater to the needs of all these people coming to town, but it was less of a headache. And I could be literally doing that from my phone because I use vendors. So it just made life much simpler for me. So as I started this business, it started to grow, mainly by word of mouth. Being honest, I didn't create a website for this business until the pandemic, because I was like, oh my God, there's no word of mouth, what will I do? And so I created a website just now, but before it was literally all word of mouth. And you're probably thinking, oh, I had 2 or 3 clients. I mean, like in the hundreds per month. Like it went crazy. This business had exploded. So while I was doing that, I was like, okay, I can travel again. So I started traveling around Africa, right? Specifically. And while I was traveling, I was like, I really I like to buy jewelry when I'm traveling. So I was like, I really want some like Africa pieces, Africa earrings, maybe a bracelet, these things. And I could never find them. I was always looking, could never find them. So I decided, let me actually have some made. This is what I want. Let me have some made. So I was in Kenya at the time and I had some made, like several pieces, by the way. I wanted a lot. So I had a choker made, a pendant, all these things. And so I went to Ghana and I took all the pieces. I also had some shoes made, some Africa shoes, some sandals. So I went to Ghana and I was in a store. Ironically, when I moved abroad, I moved from LA. And I had been there for 15 years because I worked in the television industry. So I was in a store. A guy from LA, he was like, oh my God, I love your shoes. Where did you get those? And I said, oh, I made these. And he was like, oh, can I order a pair? And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. So at the same time, the owner of the store was at the register. She came from behind the register and she was like, can I see your shoes? And I'm like, absolutely. And she was like, oh my God, I would love to have those in my store. I was like, you know what? Let me come back next week. Let's set an appointment. Let me come back next week. Let me bring you all of, the items in my line, right? It wasn't a line at all. It was just, some things I made for myself. So I packed up everything I had made for myself, the shoes, the jewelry, everything. And I came back to the store. She ordered 10 of each piece. And so at that moment, I entered into the retail space. And now I have jewelry and shoes in retail all around the world. That's business number 2. So after being able to, save and invest and these things like that, I stumbled across business number 3. So I heard about some lucrative opportunities here in, Kenya, because there's lots of construction and development, lots of it. So I'm like, you know what, how can I get involved in this business and actually be able to help people, provide jobs, these types of things. And so I started into the construction business from entertainment, right? So I'm going from travel to jewelry, now to construction. So now I own a construction equipment leasing business. So we basically lease out construction equipment to developers. So that's business number 3. Now, after doing all this, now I'm a typical 9 to 5er. Everything I've ever known was, go to school, get your education so you can get a good job. At this point, I'm like, I don't know what a good job is. Like, if you have to be stuck somewhere where you don't want to be for about 9 to 10 hours a day, I don't know how good that is. But that's what I had been told. So I thought this could be my only path. And so now, like, I'm sitting here and I'm just making lots of money and things are going great. And I'm just like, I thought about friends and family back home. And I know I've seen even colleagues, I've seen them frustrated, I've seen them struggle. I've seen them want to spend more time with their children. I've seen them in bad relationships that they need to get out of. So I was like, you know what? Business number 4 has to be helping someone, has to be giving back. So that's why I started a consulting business, helping specifically women to become digital entrepreneurs, because I just want to help them grow and be able to just live life to the fullest and basically discover a life they love, because I wake up on a Monday excited. You know, I don't have to report to anybody. I don't have to go anywhere. I can literally veg out in front of the television for 10 hours if I'd like to, you know? So I wanted that for other people. So I started a consulting company called Someday Started Today, because, you know, as we all do, we put off everything till someday. When is someday? You know, so I wanted to help people to start their someday today. So I started a company called somedaystartedtoday.com. And so there I'm just helping women kind of do the same thing that I've been able to do. Basically take your passion, your skill set, package it up and sell it for a profit. And so that's what I'm doing today. So I'm just so grateful to have had this opportunity just to be able to create something on my own, build a brand, because I know, you know, I think we all kind of have that fear that we have to have this more reliable, what we call reliable, we think is reliable, you know, some income that's coming in every other week. I mean, it's nice when that check hits, you know, every other week. But what I can tell you is now every day checks hit my account. Because I thought the 9 to 5 was great. You know you're going to get paid every other week. Now it's on a daily basis. We have something here called mobile money. At the end of every day, there's mobile money coming in for me. So, and just even through my emails, like, you know, there's money coming, there's money coming. And I never thought this could exist for me, you know, because when I was at my 9 to 5, like I'm negotiating, you know, multi-million-dollar deals. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because this is a big brand. Like, you know, of course, people want to buy in for this brand, but why would they want to buy into me and what I'm offering? So, what I can tell you now from experience, that people do buy into you, because even when you're at that company, the reason they pay you 6 figures is because they know what you can do. They know what you have inside of you to offer them, and they know you're going to take that 6 figures and make it 7 figures and 8 figures for them over and over again. So now we just need to have that same confidence in ourselves that you can do it. You can do this. You know, the same way you build someone else's brand, that's the same energy you need to have when you build your own brand. So that's what I'm here for. I want to share with you ladies everything that I have done so far and help you start your someday today.
Yes, you are a goddess. I want you back. Like, I want you just like, do you have a podcast? Do you have like the Bible of how to travel and make money and just live your own truth? I love your journey. Thank you for sharing your journey. I love that you were able to realize that you have the potential and you have all of the talent and energy that you need to make your businesses grow. And I love how it kind of they started in this impromptu way, but based on what your passions were. So I hope that, I mean, I see some folks nodding their heads. Thank you for turning your cameras on. I see you, Belle, Wendy, Jordan. Hello. I'm also just going to shout out where we're calling from in the world so that we can see this is a global community. So I'm calling from Patagonia in Argentina. I'm originally from Los Angeles, so we need to talk about that because I left the entertainment industry too. Not on your level, but you know, need to carve my own way. So Nikki Faye is calling from Kenya. We've got Brooklyn in the house, Southern California representing, New York, Pakistan, Michigan, Kansas City, born in LA, Spain. Okay, wait, no, Jordan, you want to go to Spain. I know that because you joined one of our other talks and you haven't moved yet to Spain. And okay, well, Nikki Faye, we got someone to talk into about moving to Spain and starting her own work. So we got South Carolina representing, Dallas, Texas. Awesome. With that said, you all have submitted some great questions offline. We're going to take these questions one by one, starting with this one here, for example. So if you see your question come up on the screen, feel free to come off mute or write in the chat box if you'd like our guest speaker to dive in deeper. This is not your question and you still, you want to add your reflections or, respond, again, come off mute and write in the chat box. I can't stress enough. We want to hear from you. All right, so Nikki Faye, let's take this first question here. How did you find the courage to leave your job at the entertainment company?
Well, I have to say it was really not so much me. It was just, the situation, like kind of realizing, once my mother passed away and she couldn't fulfill her dreams because she was waiting for retirement. And we know the retirement age in the US is 66 and a half. So, if you're waiting for 66 to live your life and discover a life you love, it may or may not happen. I mean, as we all know, we're all experiencing a pandemic right now. We know many people, hundreds of thousands of people had plans for someday, and that someday will never come. So you have to live your life for today. My motto is don't wait, do it now. So that was really my passion. It was, this is kind of a sense of urgency for me now. You can't wait because this day may never come. So I started to live my dreams then.
Beautiful. And then I just want to dive in deeper on this question because I love that you are highlighting moving from a corporate way of working for someone else to help them generate all this, money. And then you unplug from that and you use those same skills to generate money for yourself. And also you have the desire to give back, which I find that there is a lack of that empathy, emotional intelligence in a lot of corporations. So I'd love for you to also just, let us know that we don't need to stay stuck to corporate if we don't vibe with it.
Yeah, you don't have to. It's something when I was, in corporate America, I felt very fearful, because you come to rely on, well, number one, attaching your name to a brand. Like if you'll notice, I never actually mentioned the company I work for because I don't feel like I need to tie myself to a brand to make me feel important anymore. Before I had to tell everybody, oh yeah, I work here. But now I just, listen, I work for myself and that has done exponentially better results than I had back then. So you have to first have confidence in yourself and get rid of the fear because guess what? You can do this. Like if you're passionate about something, let me tell you something. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are also passionate about the same thing. Chewing gum. You enjoy chewing gum? Okay, start manufacturing gum. Do you know how many different types of unique gums you can create? Because when you go to the grocery store, there are only 4 or 5 types of gum. Anything you can think of, you can take that, attach it to your skill sets and build something. And so that's really what drives the courage, knowing that you can do more. Do you not have more confidence in yourself than your corporation has in you? And if not, that's something you need to start to build. Build maybe slowly but surely. Maybe start, putting something out there small, then putting something else out there and see if people bite, and that also will give you the confidence to be able to walk away from that situation. Or maybe stay there and just start something of your own, so you can have a really nice side hustle.
Beautiful, beautiful. So much to dig into there, but I know we've got some great questions coming up. So I'll move on to this next one here. What has been the biggest obstacle in your way since moving and how are you navigating around it?
I have to say, people ask me this all the time, but I didn't really have any obstacles. The only obstacles I could say that I've had are ones that I've discovered locally. Because, when you go anywhere, it's a challenge to adapt to the culture. And I've developed a lot of patience, because I'm accustomed to things moving a certain way or at a certain speed. And when you go abroad, people aren't in a hurry anymore. People are just like, oh, yeah, whatever. It's like the whole world is on island time except the US. So you're like, wait, what time should I be there? 5 o'clock. Okay, I get there at 5. And they stroll in at 7 or 8. And you're like, I thought we were meeting at 5. The rest of the world is just super relaxed. So I think it takes a great deal of patience once you arrive. But getting here for me wasn't really challenging because once I make my mind up to do something, I just do it. So that's either to my detriment or benefit, but either way, that's kind of how I move through life.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know I told you all not to take notes and to rewatch the video, but I see that this is definitely necessary. Go ahead and take out your pen and paper and take some of these notes down. I love that you are, what I find that is so disheartening, especially with women in the workforce, is that the courage is lacking, or this imposter syndrome is like this huge word these days. And I'm like, but wait a minute. Why? I would love to hear your opinion on imposter syndrome.
You know why that happens though, is because in our workplaces, for women specifically, we've been given a ceiling. We can only go this far, and when people have told us, this whole time where you have to, lessen who you are. Don't show as much personality. Don't be yourself. You have to present yourself as this way or one way, in this particular field if you want to move up in the field. And even when you move up, there's only so far you can go. How many corporate CEOs do we know who are women? you know? So it's like when you've been told you have to like, dim your own light, your entire life, your entire career, it's easy to fall into this imposter syndrome because you're not, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not worthy. I can't, I don't have the ability. And that's because they've stressed that to us for far too long. And now we have to identify our own power and realize, we are powerful, we are strong, and we can do whatever it is we set our minds to.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. So speaking about identifying your powers, let's move to this next question here. How can we identify sellable passions? How many passions should we try to turn into a business?
Well, for me, as you can see, my passions are I'll make anything sell. Like, even what I'm wearing today, like this is for my jewelry line, just stuff I like. I've never created anything that I didn't actually enjoy, from the Airbnb to the jewelry, even construction. Like before I started in this business, I was always at some developer site because I'm just like, what do you have going on? How do you do it? Who's buying? It's specifically in Kenya, because I'm like, a lot of these places are really expensive. Who's buying these properties? So I've always had like a really strong curiosity, even for that industry. And I've always had a strong heart to help people. And I got that from my mom and my grandmother, because they literally dedicated their entire lives to helping people. And so I kind of got that honestly. But I think, when we're looking at ourselves and what we can create, from our passions, it's literally whatever you enjoy. I love TV. I'm telling you, I know people like to talk about that, like you're a couch potato and say negative things. I love TV. I always have. Like even my mom and I really bonded around TV. And so most people are like, okay, you can't be a couch potato. You can't watch a lot of TV. Well, guess what? I had a 15-year career working in television. So what about that for passion? So it's like literally taking everything you love. I loved earrings and jewelry. Okay. And shoes and things that had the Africa symbol on them. And so I created something from that. So it's like literally anything you can identify that you love and you enjoy doing, that's actually the best thing you can do to turn into a profit, because that's something you want to do. You can wake up every day and love what you're doing because that's something you already are attracted to, something you already enjoy. So now it's about creating or becoming standing in a position of creativity from that passion. So now it's something I love. I can do it for a living now. Let me think about how many ways this can actually go. So the reason why we don't actually have these creative juices running now is because we're focused on something else. We all have our 9 to 5s. So that's where our focus is. And think about it, when you go into that boardroom, you go into those conference rooms and have meetings, you come up with probably like 10 to 15 questions that you won't even have time to answer because you're focused on that brand, how you can grow it, how you can make it better, and how you can multiply it, right? So when you're working for yourself, that same mentality creeps right back. You don't lose it. So it's just now I'm doing it for myself. So think about whatever your passions are. Once you've figured out what that thing is, start brainstorming. Even if you say, you know what, I'm going to dedicate some time on the weekends. So I'm not thinking about my job and I'm just going to focus on this thing. So your creative energies can start flowing, even through those things. And I think, listen, everything I've had a passion for, I've actually turned into a business, even in my 9 to 5. So I don't think there's a limit on how many of your passions you can turn into a business. And I think the problem is that, people kind of don't look fondly on people doing a number of things. There's that saying like a jack of all trades, a master of none. But why can't you master more than one trade? Why is that looked frowned upon? Why is it negative? Because if you look at all the billionaires and millionaires in the world, they're not just focused on one thing. Once they've mastered that, they move on to something else. And that's also what we're doing. I've mastered the one thing that's brought me a profit. I move on to something else. I master that one. Now I'm still doing these things as I go, but I'm just adding to what I'm doing. I'm creating multiple streams of income. And that's what we have to have for ourselves. Like even corporations realize the value in creating multiple income streams. It's just we have to change our mindsets to that is acceptable for our lives.
There's so much juice there. I feel like we can talk about, the education system, at least in the States where we got our education. I got public education, running through my veins right now that I'm especially now questioning everything that I've learned. And I love talking about the B side of history. And I often find that, there's so many talks and so many pieces of literature about this and how schools are more of like factories to make you understand how to work one way, this linear thought, right? Instead of what you just said is more holistic. It's like, but I'm a creative person and I want to amplify that. I don't want to stifle my light or like, tell my creativity to take the back seat. And so how can we nurture that and feed that ourselves? And I find that in at least in public school education, you aren't really shown how to do that. And I know that some folks might currently be in roles right now where maybe they feel stifled. They feel like they aren't able to nurture passions. I'd love for you to speak specifically to those people who are like kind of at the crossroads of, do I stay? Do I go? If I stay, how can I at least nurture my passions? Or if I go, how can I have the confidence enough to, navigate those waters? I'd love for you to speak to that particular person, especially during COVID. This is the time, in my opinion, to experiment, right? And I know you probably feel the same way.
Yes. I think, this pandemic has been a blessing and a curse, right? Because we've discovered things about ourselves that we had no clue existed. I started baking, and I've always said, oh, I'm a cook and not a baker. But during the pandemic, I really wanted some croissants, I really wanted some banana nut bread, all these things. So I made these things myself. So now we've been given space to actually explore the creative sides of us. And also with this pandemic, a lot of corporations have figured out it's actually possible to work from home. You can be just as productive or even more productive than you are in the office. Because think about it, we're at the office, we're taking coffee, we're chatting with coworkers. When we're at home, I want to hurry up and get this work done so I can be finished and move on to something else. So I think during those times, like hopefully, they'll become more open to remote working, and you'll actually figure out that you've discovered, these other things that you also can do. So I think we have to just figure out a way for us to just sit with ourselves and figure out where we want to go. It's not often that we get this little blessing that we've gotten. So I think you should take the time, just package up your skills. What is it you can do, and take those things and create something greater from that.
Absolutely. And I love that you're directing us back to ourselves. Like, sit with yourself, think about what you need, what you want, what drives you, what gives you passion, and don't measure it against someone else's definition of productivity and growth. I find that's something that we're clashing with. At least I hear all the different dialogues happening about productivity and all the apps you need for productivity and growth and this like illusion of infinite growth. It's like, well, and that ends up, putting you, making you feel burnt out because it's not healthy. It's not holistic. And so I love that you're
grow, but in your business, you can grow in your personal life, but I think you have to change your mindset really, because you have to think about this 9 to 5, while it's great as it is, it's just a means to an end. We were trained to think something completely opposite, and it's because our parents were taught the same thing. Our friends were taught the same thing. So if you're doing something different and out of the box, like no one's going to understand that. So you have to kind of, think about that. So I was reading a book called Propaganda by Edward Bernays, and he talks about how this mindset began. He started it. So it is actually a mindset they created and put upon us, and we don't even know what's happening. So we have to do a whole reset. When I was going through this process myself, like it was hard to jump out of this, mentality of being an employee and answering to someone. And you actually have to get up because you push yourself to get out because no one's going to hold you accountable. So it's about, holding yourself accountable and kind of figuring out these things that are best for you. I think a lot of times, we go based on what everyone else says. When I was graduating high school, my dad told me I need to study engineering. So I went to engineering school, and he told me that because my cousin had an engineering degree. So it's like, okay, so you don't really know much, but you just told me to do what someone else did. Once I got there, I figured, okay, this really isn't it for me. And then I decided to, pursue law. To get my law degree, which was great, but it was at least my decision, kind of, sort of, I watched the Cosby Show and, all that, but it was still something I consciously decided, on my own. So I think we just really have to take this time, sit with ourselves, figure out where we are, put those passions and skills together. We don't realize how many skills we have until we start to use them. Because when I started to do business on my own, I'm like, wow, I actually learned a lot. I grew a lot. And even through my education, I learned a lot that I'm able to put together those pieces now. So it's about, when you're talking about identifying passions and how do you sell those things, you have to package them up based on the skills you already have. There are lots of things you're doing now. Even we don't think about it, but we think because, it kind of comes second nature at this point. But we have so many skills at our, at our fingertips and available to us, and things that we're good at, things that we've learned. So now it's up to you to think about how you can use those and put those, implement those things in your life to start your own thing. And that's literally like, I'm not telling anybody to quit your job. Like, keep your job. It is a means to an end. Use that job to save your money. Use that job for time so you can build up, the skills that you may need for this next career, this next place in your life. And also try to do some other work, maybe, start doing the cooking, baking, baking, and bake for your friends and see if they like it. Maybe that's a skill that you have that you actually want to package and recreate. So it can literally be anything.
I love this. So Wendy writes in the chat box, yes, we can imagine a better way. Beautiful. Yvette also writes, plus you can run laundry on a break, speaking to being able to work at home these days. So I'd like to hold for a light pause to see if someone wants to hop off of mute and ask Nikki Faye or reflect with Nikki Faye with your own voice so that I don't hog the mic here. So I'll hold for a light pause to see if someone wants to hop off of mute. All right, so I'll move on to this next question here. And again, feel free to hop off mute whenever or write in the chat box. We want to hear from you. All right, let's move on to this next question, Nikki Faye. What can we do if our skills don't translate into a digital format? How do I turn my hands-on skills into a virtual paying job?
Well, I will tell you, it's, I'm just going to give you examples based on my own life. For these jewelry pieces, someone has to make these, and then I have to get them to retailers, right? But once I've done that piece, I'm hands off. So now I'm just looking at my phone to see when the money rolls in, see when those pieces have sold and when they need to re-up. So now it's about setting up processes for yourself. So for me, I've set up a manufacturing processing center here in Kenya. So when those things need to be re-upped, okay, I have the manufacturers, create new pieces, and then I ship them off. After that, I'm hands off. I'm still traveling the world, right? I visited over 50 countries while building these businesses. So it's just about putting, processes together so you can still be hands off and still work from your phone. The travel business, literally from my phone. So I've set up processes and put things in place. So there are people there to run the business. There are vendors there to accommodate all my guests and every need. So I've put those processes in place. So now that thing that's really not so virtual, it's now digital. Right? So even the construction company, once I purchase the machines, I send them out into the world. I have a broker who's like, the person who gets the jobs and make sure the repairs are done. And so I'm literally texting every day like, hey, we're working today. Yeah. And then waiting for the money to roll in. So it's like, even those things, none of those are digital per se, but you set up processes, you set up a system, and then everything else is just digital. Somebody's texting me, hey, the machine needs to be repaired. Somebody's texting me like, oh, we want to, use your machine this week. Okay, fine. All of that is done from my phone. So once I've set these things up, and the same for you, whatever it is you do, you can set up a process and a system so these things can work without you just being there all the time.
Beautiful. So I have a private message here. Would love to hear you speak about funding, outside funding. So investors, maybe subscriptions or things like that. Can you talk about that a little bit, Nikki Faye?
Yeah, as far as funding goes, I literally, before I left the country, I worked every single possible hustle that I could to save a substantial amount of money in the span of 6 months, by the way. So, and it was also, taking out investments, money I had earned from investments and things like that. But I left with a substantial amount of money because I knew I wanted to invest in myself. I didn't know what, but I knew there was going to be something I was going to invest in and, figure out the skill that I could use abroad. And I would do this through entrepreneurship. So I knew those things were coming. So I saved up money so I can invest in myself. But for you guys, that you can get loans, if you think about it, if you're traveling, especially, or credit cards, you can get those credit cards, get a loan in the US while you're there. So now you put that money away. So when you travel, when you get ready to move abroad, or you say, I want to be location independent, work from home, be with my kids every day, the money's already there. So now you take that money and invest it, or even a credit card. Like, in the US, they're giving you like $20,000, $30,000 lines of credit. So use that to your advantage, because you can't go abroad and get a loan. Like, I can't go to the bank in Kenya and say, hey, I need a loan for this. So you have to kind of prepare. So if you plan ahead, that's all in the strategy that you're putting together before you leave. So I don't recommend, even though I did it in 6 months, I actually don't recommend you leave in 6 months, or even, leave your job in 6 months, even if you just want to be home with your children. You need time to plan. You need time to strategize and put these things together, so you know exactly how much funding you will need and how much you'll have on hand once you leave. You want a significant amount of money when you get ready to, start your own business, because it does require a lot of capital. And also tap your family and friends. All these GoFundMe's are out here for this, that, and the other. Do a GoFundMe for your own business. People love to see you win, especially people who love you. So don't be afraid to put the feelers out there and let people know what you're doing. Allow them to contribute to your life.
So beautiful. Well said. Thank you for that encouragement. Your response reminds me of a guy that I met here years ago in Argentina, who's from the States. And I just have this memory of him always with a camera. And he said that he didn't know how to take photos. He wouldn't consider himself a photographer before leaving the States, but he wanted to leave the States. And he, on a whim, like got a credit card specifically to get this really dope camera. And he is one of the best photographers that I met. And he just he basically took your advice and did that. And I'm sure he was able to, pay that credit card off by the work that he was able to do. And not to mention, feeding that passion of capturing beautiful photos around the world. So I think that we need to speak more about these stories, instead of the ones that fail and don't make it. And we're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. And we lose the courage to go out to listen to ourselves essentially, and then share more stories like this that end up positively. So thank you so much, Nikki Faye. All right, let's move on to this next question here. What advice do you have for finding reliable, cost-effective resources that provide guidance on the legal matters related to being a digital nomad? For example, freelancer contracts, taxes, establishing company businesses, etc.
Well, for me, I swear by these freelancer companies. And because there's so many opportunities to get cheaper services, than you normally would, because these are people who operate with no overhead. They're working from home. So it's less expensive for them to provide the service. So literally most of the service that I get from these online, companies where people are freelancing their services. So I think really that's the best option. Or if you know people, you have people who do certain things, you can reach out to them. If you're moving abroad specifically, then it's talk to the locals, because lots of times you can get local services, legal services and taxes and all that kind of stuff from locals, or either expats who have traveled abroad and they're also digital nomads. So there's plenty of access to services online and in person. It's just you have to, look into, your resources locally and also with your expat groups. I have found lots of expat groups of every kind from almost every country on Facebook. Like you can go to expats of Kenya, expats of Colombia, literally any country you can think of, China, everything, they're online. So you use those people and those resources to get you what you need.
Absolutely. I can echo that, because when you come to a new country and maybe you speak the language, maybe you don't, but there are seasoned expats there who can say definitely don't go to this place on a Monday because you're going to wait for hours. And then that's already a huge tip, or go to this website and make sure you ask for this person. And so yes, expat groups are definitely reliable resources. And then you also have to give that back a certain way. You find something works, you put it in the expat group, and then, hopefully everyone's lives will be at least a little easier. So you're passing on that good energy.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to this next question here. And just so everyone knows, we've got just about 20 minutes left. So I told you all that time would fly. If you're looking for an opportunity to share your voice, just let me know in the chat box. For now, let's move on to this next question here. How can you collaborate effectively with locals when you don't have a command of the language? This is a great question.
Well, I've moved to countries and not just not having a command, didn't know anything. So I think you kind of have to find your tribe. The same as with these other issues, you find your tribe amongst expats, and they'll kind of point you in the right direction. But for me, I'm all about building relationships. So once I find someone who I kind of mesh with, and I build on that and I create relationships. A lot of people talk about networking, things like that, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And in LA especially, they're like, "What do you do?" Before they ask your name, and it's like,
It's the second question. Like,
right?
why does it matter? Get to know me.
Exactly. Like, hello, Faye, hello. But it's just like, I think it's about relationship building. So when people I come across and they're great people and we mesh and, they have access to services and things like that, like we're becoming friends. And so all the services that I provided, even through my business, are through who I call friends, because my networking is about building friendships and meeting people and bonding with people. So I think really that's the key. So what I have done in those countries, there are always people who speak English, by the way. Like, thankfully, we're from a country where most people in the world speak the language, or even, some people there speak the language. And so when I come across people who are bilingual in that way, and I offer, I ask them to help me. And pay them for their services. Don't just take advantage, but pay them for their services. And say, hey, I don't speak the language, but I need to negotiate this deal, or I need to get into this business. Can you come and help me? And lots of times I will send them instead of going myself, because they're local, so they'll get that local rate. So that's the best thing, just establishing good relationships. Or you can just pay somebody. The problem with not building a relationship and just paying someone is that you don't know if you're being taken advantage of. So that's the real issue. So, but my strategy is just building great relationships and building off of those, and also now you're providing jobs to other people, even people that you enjoy being around. So I think that's the key.
Yes, it's so holistic, the way that you see this and the way that you are, living this reality. So thank you for sharing your journey, and I hope that folks on this call are being inspired by your transparency as well. Pass it on, right? Like leave space at the table, keep the door open, break the ceiling, and build relationships, authentic relationships. I love that. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. What is something you wish you had known before moving abroad?
Well, when I moved to Colombia, I pretty much knew. I had spent probably a year there before anyway. So I knew a lot about it. But as I moved to other places, I kind of made some assumptions that I probably shouldn't have made. One is how expensive every country in Africa is, like, very expensive. I didn't expect it. I actually wrote a book called How I Traveled the World with $2 in my bank account. And that happened in Ghana because I thought things would be much cheaper, and they weren't. So I kind of ran out of travel money, because I have separate pots for everything. And I'm just like, look, I ran out of travel money, so I'm going to have to figure it out. And I'll live off of this $2 that I have left. And it was great because it taught me to be resourceful. And I think that has really helped me in all of my businesses, just being resourceful, finding out a way to do it, even if you don't have the funds, finding cost-effective ways to execute something. So I think it's really, helped me, throughout my life. But that's one thing that I do recommend, do some research about every country you're visiting, because, some places are really expensive and sometimes we don't expect it.
Yes, and I'd love to just piggyback on two things that you mentioned. So oftentimes, when someone brings up the concept of privilege, we have one way of looking at privilege. But then when you go into the world, you realize that when you speak English, or when, and your native language is English, and you go into the world, that is a huge privilege because of, unfortunately or fortunately, the way that the economy is structured. Schools, parents, for example, in Argentina, will send their kids outside to a different school outside of school hours to learn English, so that they can then, travel the world and speak and be bilingual. And I've had grown ass people come to me wanting to sit in Starbucks to just, practice their English so that they can do business in English. And it is a huge privilege. So I love that you're pointing out that English is this tool to use as a resource, especially when you're traveling the world. Obviously, with empathy and emotional intelligence, so that we're not taking advantage of anyone. And then the other thing that I love that you brought up is just, being resourceful and having to tap into the economy. however you can, again, not taking advantage of anyone, but, you know, giving someone extra work by translating or something like that. Argentina here, the economy is just like up and down, up and down, up and down. It is no longer inexpensive. It was when I was here in 2012 and even in 2009 when I first came in university. But now it's like, you know, it's the same. If I want to rent a place in I don't know, in Houston, Texas, it's kind of the same as renting a place in Buenos Aires. And so just to be ahead of yourself, don't just think that if you go to another country, you know, that it's going to be cheaper. Sometimes it is, but then, you know, who knows what will happen in a year. Look at what is happening now. It'd be interesting to see what happens with the global economy next year. Actually, this is a great question. I just love to, Miss Businesswoman with the multiple avenues of streams of income. How do you predict the economy will be next year? What do you think about that?
You know, I can't say that I have any predictions about next year's economy. What I can say is I'm always preparing myself. So I am literally the queen of the pivot. So before these things happen, like literally, I have to tell you, so the travel business was going really well, extremely well, right? Like I had more business than I could handle, but I pivoted before the pandemic happened and I started this construction business, thankfully, because, you know, once this thing happened, there is no travel. You know, there was no travel. No one was traveling. So a travel business, you know, but I had the jewelry line still. I had the construction company, which just started, like literally machines started rolling in March. So I started that business in March when things started locking down. So just before everything closed down, you know, these things started rolling in. So I was able to, you know, because of that pivot that I started before something went wrong, you know, I was able to continue to bring in income and not have any problems. But a lot of people just don't know when to pivot. You know, they're like, oh, this is really going well. I always use the example of Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? You know, like the guy who is now the CEO of Netflix went to the CEO of Blockbuster and said, hey, let's partner because I believe the world is going digital, you know? So whether it went digital or not, it would have been a great partnership because now it's multiple streams, right? But he didn't move with the pivot. Like he didn't pivot in time. So actually he didn't pivot at all. He's like, look, I'm Blockbuster. I have locations all over the world. I'm thriving. I'm doing well. When's the last time you saw Blockbuster? So
I'm nostalgia though, because I missed
loved it,
Blockbuster.
right? With the blue card and everything. But who even has a VCR these days? So it's like, you know, you have to be ready to pivot, you know, continue to doing things. Someone asked a question earlier about how many passions can you actually execute into a business? Yeah, all of them, you know? So it's about, you know, once you've done one thing and it's successful, okay, start to go in a different direction. Yeah, you can keep this one thing, but start something else, pick up something else because we have multiple passions. All of us do. So let's use those things, you know, merge them with our skill set and create a profit for ourselves. So that's what you have to really do. Like, you know, you have to be ready for the next thing and always be creating more. You know, once you've created one thing, like, you know, I wrote one book and I was like, oh, that was cool. I wrote one book. And I was like, I'm not doing anything. Let me write 10 books. So nobody knows it, but on my computer, I have about 30 books actually, because as I have downtime, I'm just writing. And so now, you know, I'll have content to release like for years to come. Now all I have to do is edit them and update them according to the times. But it's just like, you know, when you have downtime, start creating, always be creating, because that's how you start to create a profit, because those things that you're creating are very valuable. Think about how valuable they are to you. Think about how much you love those earrings. You know, every time you go out, you want to find a new pair of earrings. You know, for me, I was like, I'm traveling. That's the only thing I can actually put into these bags. Like, you know, I can't carry any more luggage. Okay. So I'm moving too much. I need to have something small that I can get from these countries and take with me. And it was jewelry. And so, you know, I had always kind of loved earrings and jewelry, stuff like that. But now I'm like, okay, I love this thing. Let's turn it into something that creates an income, you know? And the things will grow beyond your wildest dreams. I know we're always like, well, will I be successful? Yes, you will. You know, because if you have a passion, like I was saying earlier, there are millions of other people who have the same passion. You know how many people love earrings, you know? So you have to start thinking about those things and get your pivots ready and start moving. Even when you're successful at one thing, continue to think outside of the box and grow that thing and multiply it.
I love that you said that you're a pivot queen, and what that helps me. I mean, I'm just like singing your praises right now, because so I studied to be an artist, and I believe that we're all creative beings. I believe that through some way or the other, it becomes numb through, you know, social norms and all the things that we could talk about on another chat. But the work comes from building that, or not building that, nurturing that muscle, that creative muscle. And so if you are using that through, to bring in income as well, it's like all the better. And why, like, let's all learn how we can do that so that we don't stay one-dimensional. We're not one-dimensional beings. We're creative beings. So oftentimes we get in these like, as you said, even these reliable roles where we think that the money's coming in, but so many people have been laid off right now. We thought we knew what was going on, and then look, from one day to the next, or you bring up your parents about retirement, and you're waiting this whole time to retire, and who knows if that's going to come? Who knows if another wave of something else is going to come and shut all of that down? So I love how you are stressing to feed that muscle and to nurture that creative muscle. Yes, thank you so much, Nikki Fan. All right, so we've got about 8 more minutes. Let's try to hit up a couple more questions. I'd love to hear from you all on the line, because I know I'm not just the only person here flying here listening to Nikki Faye, so please let me know if you have something to share. So let's move on to this question here. Can you share the diverse types of income streams available to work from home internationally? So we're talking about your ways. Is there anything where you're like, if I had more time, I would do that?
I think not many things are off limits, really. I mean, we're in a digital world, thankfully, right? So we can literally be anywhere doing anything. So I think you have to just think about the things that you actually care about, and try to package those up and try to make those into, income streams. So I really think, if you ask me, there are unlimited, types of income streams for work abroad, or work remotely, or work online, or if you just want to be at home with your kids or whatever.
Beautiful. All right, let's move on to this next question here. Where can we start looking for remote positions so that we can live abroad?
There are so many websites to look for remote work, but this is the one thing people don't do, which I've done for years, but people don't do this. And it's do your regular job search, and just instead of typing your city, type in remote. And all the remote positions will immediately come up. There are websites dedicated to that, and some of them are paid, some of them are free. And those are great too. But your whatever traditional methods you use, just use that and just type remote.
So yes, just to drop Power to Fly as well. You go to Power to Fly, you search remote, and you'll find a bunch of cool options as well. Also, start your own work. That's what we've been saying this whole time. So, use that remote, but, start to fill your own passions as well. I love that. Okay, so let's move on to this question here. Can you share some tips on how to land clients?
Yeah, so the first advice I always offer is be everywhere all the time. So whatever that thing is, even if you're just starting out, whatever that thing is, share it with people. Let them know that you're offering this service. Let them know you're offering this product, and allow them to enjoy the products. Now, when you create the product or service, make sure it's excellent. So you need to let excellence be your brand, because if excellence is your brand, you'll never have to promote. Like I was saying with the travel business, I never had to promote. I'd never had to have a website. Literally, people would call me on the phone to set up travel and send me thousands of dollars. No website, no business name, no business register, nothing, just me, because someone else vouched for me. They were told they had amazing service. Everything they needed was taken care of. Even things they never thought of were all taken care of. So that's how that word spread. So that's like free advertisement, right? So it's like, whatever you're doing, do it everywhere. Put it on your social media page. We spend a lot of time posting cute pictures, we're posing all cute and stuff, but spend that time like telling people what you're doing, what you're offering, what abilities you have. Hey, I baked this cake today. I thought it was great. Would anybody like to try it? Now you're spreading your gift. And also, if you have a service where you're helping people, then help people. Like, you don't have to say, oh, I have to attach a dollar amount to it right now. Just do something to help people. Or, what, I'm making all these cakes, I'll go donate these things and see what they think about the cakes that I've made. So you're serving now, and you're actually helping people. And it's in that, I can't tell you how many stories of people I've heard. They're like, oh, I took these cakes down to the Salvation Army and I fed a bunch of people. Just so happened there was a corporate executive who was also there volunteering his time. And now I landed a big corporate deal providing for every event, my service, my cakes or whatever, to every event they have now. So I always say, you'll find what you love when you're doing what you love. So just start doing it. Be everywhere all the time. Like even now, like I'm on this call, this is my jewelry line. So it's everywhere. I'm always wearing it. I'm always having it on me because it's now a conversation starter. Someone's like, oh, where did you get that necklace? Ah, glad you asked, you know? So be everywhere all the time.
I love that. And that's, yes, Nikki Faye, that's one of the first things I noticed as well, was like, ooh, that is nice and shiny. I want to know more about that. So you are definitely practicing what you preach. And I love, we've got folks here singing your praises here in the chat box. So Wendy writes, no questions here. Lots of truth and inspiration already flowing. Joyce writes, the first time I heard Blacksit was from Nikki Faye. I do believe she coined the term, a pivot queen. What is Blacksit? I've never heard of that.
Blacksit is a group for Black Americans who are looking to move abroad.
And so expat. Oh, great. I'm like old school. I'm not
coronavirus pivot. Because I was sitting here, everyone's looking at how there's problems in the US, like in Black Americans, they are not happy, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm very happy. So I thought maybe I can share a little bit of happiness with them too. So I was like, you know what? If you're not happy where you are in America, you can come abroad here, there, and everywhere else, and you can thrive, you know? You can have a really full life abroad, and it's cheaper, by the way. So, you know, I wanted to help people actually do this. So I created Blacksit Tribe. And so now I started in May, we have over 10,000 members, just a random thought I had while sitting at my coffee table, you know, taking my breakfast. And now like it really blossomed into something really great. So I think we have to all just do that thing. Again, I was talking the pivots, like that's another pivot. If you see like the market is ripe for a certain thing, or you see that people are really into a certain thing, and you know, take your thing, your passionate thing, and put it out now. So it's about timing. Release that right now and knowing that it's time to pivot. Like, you know, I think everybody kind of picked up something during the pandemic. So whatever your thing was, take it out and send it out into the world and see what happens with it, even now as you're in your 9 to 5. So again, the 9 to 5 is a means to an end. So you can use now the time and execute that thing. Start doing freelance work for your service and see, like, you know, maybe you can build up a clientele. Like I know someone who started, you know, freelancing while she was in her 9 to 5. She was working full time, and she also started her services business. She quit when she made $1 million. Can you imagine? $1 million while you're working a job. So she was able to take that side hustle, do a complete pivot, and leave her job and create a 7 to 8 figure business.
Beautiful. I'm so inspired by you. And I know that folks on the call are as well. We've got about 2 more minutes. So Nikki Faye, I'd love for you to leave us with some food for thought, and then let us know where we can find you online, on socials, whatever your preferred way of us reaching out so that we can support the work that you're doing and just learn more about you. So yes, I'd love to pass the mic to you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and leave us with some food for thought, please.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been a great experience. Everyone with your questions, this has been really great, and your encouragement, I really appreciate it. You know, I'm always saying like, oh, you know, I'm coming here to help people. And every time I end up being helped by someone else. So I really appreciate, you know, you guys coming here and sharing this time with me. And, you know, I have to say, like, you know, my number one thing that I like to stress to people is that life is really short. You know, none of us expect this pandemic. You know, my mother didn't expect to pass away. Like, we have all these hopes and dreams in our lives, things we want to do, people we want to share it with, like, but literally there's no reason to wait. You know, whatever you're doing today, like, you can put that on hold to live your dream and discover a life you love. Since I've moved abroad, like, it's honestly been the best decision I've ever made, because now I no longer feel like in bondage. Like, I feel I have a sense of freedom that I've never had before. Can you imagine? And every day I wake up happy and excited. And being honest, like every day I wake up like, man, is this really my life? You know? So it's just like, I never even could have dreamed and imagined I'd be in this space, especially with entrepreneurship. You know, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I'll tell you a quick story, but my grandmother was actually a maid. And so she was a hustler though, because after work, she would actually wash and iron clothes for people. And she saved up a significant amount of money. She started opening her own businesses. And by the time she passed away, she had given every one of her children, 7 children, by the way, each an amazing property. So it's like, this entrepreneur gene, I guess, has been in my family for years to come, but it's something I never wanted to do because I'm like, listen, I don't know if I can do it. That fear crept in and just kept me from living the life that I really wanted to live, even though like I had a great job, but it's like, I was building a legacy for someone else. So either you can continue to build someone else's legacy so they can live the dreams that you dream every night, or you can step out on your own and actually build something and build your own brand and create something that you're passionate about that you can help generations for years to come and also build your own legacy. I mean, think about it. If your children's children's children won't have to work, what an honor. So I stress to you now, like, let your someday start today. The time is now to discover a life you love. Like, this is not the time to live in misery. Life is too short. You have people who are dying in hospitals every day. Think about it. They will never live their dreams. They will never retire and then travel the world. Like, those things they won't have access to. So don't let that be you. If entrepreneurship or traveling or being home with your children, spending more time with your husband, whatever it is, whatever those things may be, do those things now because life is too short to wait. So I hope you all will discover a life you love and start that today.
Yes, thank you so much, Nikki Faye, and thank you everyone for joining us. I've just learned so much just from hearing how enthusiastic you are about your dream becoming your reality, and I hope that more of us can take that lead. So thank you, Nikki Faye. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next Chat and Learn.